G'day, Geoff Lewis here from Seriously Series, and welcome to another workshop update video in the Landy Cave. As many of you know, I did an update video earlier in the year telling you about what Damon and myself are going to be up to in 2020. But as you know, here at Seriously Series, it's not just about getting out in the bush, it's what happens behind the scenes. And a lot has been happening in 2019. And there's a lot to happen in 2020. So I thought I'd do an update and let you know what's been going on here and what we've got in store in particular over the next 6 months and following on. And we have got a brand new vehicle, old vehicle, but brand new vehicle in the Seriously Series fleet. And I'll be introducing that in this video too, so stay tuned. Rightio, so what's been happening? Well, a heck of a lot has actually been going on. Aroma drive has been fitted to the Series 3. The front and rear differentials have been completely and utterly overhauled and rebuilt, courtesy of Ben Broder at Goldfields Off-Road and the team there. So a big thank you to Goldfields Off-Road for that, and particularly Shannon and Tiff there too, who went about sourcing out some of the more unique parts to make that possible. Now, in rebuilding the actual differentials for the Series 3, we did a few interesting little changes to it. And this is actually the ARB air locker. So it has now got ARB air lockers front and rear. So pretty tough bit of kit. I will talk about that in greater detail later on in the video. The Parenti here is back on the road. I've completely overhauled the front, the front, just trying to think what I did, the front axle assembly. Because when I bought it, and I bought this off Grays Online, which is a subsidiary company of Frontline Machinery, or works in conjunction with them, to obviously sell off the fleet of Parentis and obviously Unimogs and other pieces of military equipment here in Australia that is sort of reaching the end of its life, protecting the borders of this great nation, but it's still serving the nation very well with me. But when I picked it up, it actually had a dent in the front differential, and I wasn't too fazed about it because, you know, it's a 30-year-old car. This one in particular has been used with the SAS for a portion of its life, so I really wasn't surprised at all if it had a few dings and a few scratches. And that's character, you know, it is character, so I don't think it's a bad thing. And if you are looking at buying a Parenti, that's the attitude I would suggest adopting. So what I did is I actually pulled the front axle assembly out. I took it down to a very capable boiler maker and fabricator, Alan here in Kalgoorlie at I think it's AS or AL Welding. And if you need anything done, whatever it may be, he's the man to talk to. There's no job too small, no job too big. He's fantastic, and he actually knocked it out for me and made sure that it wasn't going to leak and all the rest. So very, very thorough job. A little bit warm in the shed today, as you can probably tell. I'm perspiring. I'm working hard for the video, so that's what we want. So basically I had that, and then when I got it back, I was under the, you know, there was a problem because Alan obviously had to heat up the metal. So all the paint that was on the actual axle assembly, or some of it, particularly on the actual diff housing itself, and that's where the problem was, at the bottom, where it got dinged in, had actually all flaked off. And I was like, oh, what am I going to do? So these vehicles, my, I guess, view is that they are, you don't own a Land Rover, you're a custodian of it because they keep going forever and ever. And Duncan out there, one of our fans and followers, he's a big FJ40 fan. He might be able to tell us whether it's the same with the FJ40 series. I don't know. Let us know, Duncan. I'm interested to hear about that. But basically, we're a custodian for these vehicles, and these vehicles have served Australia, the Australian Defence Force, and before that, the 2nd AIF, flawlessly. They've done a fantastic job. And I think it's really, in my mind, I think we've kind of got to honour that and kind of keep these vehicles going to show future generations and all the rest. So I didn't want to just paint it with any old paint. You know, I could easily go get a couple tins of spray paint from Mitre 10 or Bunnings or some hardware store and just do a rough job. But I thought, no, let's take our time, let's do it right. And that's what I did. So I got a oxide primer and put 3 coats of oxide primer on it. I then used a 2-pack paint, which is actually what the vehicle's has been painted with, a 2-pack paint, 2-pack automotive paint. And I got some of that not in gloss, I got it in a semi-gloss, because you can't actually get a matte 2-pack paint, or at least this is what I've been told. So the paint that's actually on the printer here, if you get a buffer and you get some cut and polish, you'll actually be able to get a pretty nice sheen on it. It won't be as good as a gloss 2-pack paint, but you'll be able to get it pretty shiny. And the other top tip is you can always tell if someone's been working on their Land Rover a lot by looking at the paint on their bull bar and the paint on the actual side of the wings, because that will be polished to perfection because of their shirt rubbing and their overalls rubbing on the paint. And it also indicates too that they actually haven't used a piece of canvas or some form of vinyl protectant to actually protect them from rubbing against the car. So another top tip for you there. So anyway, did that, and then obviously checked over a number of other things. The vehicle has now done 150,000 kilometres on the clock. That corresponds with the service book that I've got. So I've gone over absolutely everything. I've put all brand new wheel bearings in, which is excessive, I know. I've put brand new seals in the actual swivel housing too. I've tested to see if there's any play in the top and lower bushes in there. They seem fine. There's a couple other little things I've got to touch up on the vehicle, but overall it's pretty much absolutely spot on where I want it to be. And I was able to get it back on the road probably about a month ago, and we did a fantastic trip from here in Kalgoorlie right down to the Australian Bight, and I'll try and put a little film together of that just to give you a bit of an idea and a bit of context in regards to it. And it went absolutely fine. Well, there was a couple of bolts came loose, but that's pretty typical for a Land Rover, and you know, if something doesn't happen then it's a pretty boring adventure. So the Parenti's back on the road. It's all ready for the trip later in the year, which we're going to be taking this and the number 5 trailer, which I'll show you in a minute. Rightio, so the number 5 trailer used to be here, but it's gone. It's disappeared. Where's it gone? Nope, it's not up there. No, it's not under the Parenti. No, it's actually down getting the guards widened. And it's something that's a little bit frustrating for myself. I went through and I checked all the wiring and made sure everything's legitimate. And I had the original tyres on it, which were the Olympic blue steel. I might be wrong there. Or Olympic steel radial tyres, which I think are fantastic. And I went in to get it registered. And with the Parenti, I really had no problems at all, but that was, sort of 4 years ago. And they went over it, and I won't say where I went, but they basically, the consensus was that the tyres were sticking out by that much, about 10 mil. And he said, yeah, I can't pass it because of that. So you've got to cut the guards, you've got to make the guards wider, you've got to put mud flaps on it, you've got to, and then he was like, oh, I'm not too sure about the brake light configuration, because they've got two round brake lights and then the actual indicators down from there. So I'm not too sure about that. And I was really frustrated, because the whole point, or one of the points of why I bought that trailer, was to go with the Parenti. And and hate is a very strong word, but I absolutely hate cutting up pieces of machinery like that, or pieces of kit that have been designed specifically for a purpose, and that's one of them. And they were saying that basically I needed to cut everything off and turn it into a standard trailer. Well, that's not the reason why I bought it. But anyway, that's enough of a rant and event from me. You don't need to hear about that. You've got your own problems to deal with, as I do. But basically, the guards are going to get slightly widened, and they'll come back, and hopefully it'll mimic sort of what the actual original design was. I've got it so I can put some mud flaps on it, but it won't ruin the overall aesthetics of the actual trailer itself. I'll have to spray up the guards too, and then hopefully after that it'll be okay. I've bought a brand new set of suspension bushes for it too, which I'll also push them all out, or have to bang them all out with the impact driver, and then put all new ones in. So I'll be sure to do a little video of that and show you what's entailed there, because they are a very popular trailer, not just with Land Rover owners either. So we're going to use that on our trip later in the year. That'll be used primarily to carry water and fuel and any other kit that we need, because we've got pretty much 2 weeks without water and fuel that we've got to survive for. So we want to try and keep as much of that in the trailer and as little of that actually in the vehicles themselves. We'll still carry 60 litres in the Series 3, and but in the Parenti itself, that'll be designated for tools and all the rest. So that's pretty much here, but we've got one more thing going on over the back here, and it's actually going to come together this week. So it's going to be interesting developments. I'll take you over there and give you a bit of a look. Rightio, so what we've got here is a 2.25 litre petrol engine, and this is out of a 1975 Land Rover Series 3. Now the funny thing about this is the wreck that I actually got it out, that I have, is the same age or the same year as the Series 3 that many of you have seen on our channel. Now the Series 3 that obviously we took to the Perth 4-wheel drive show and all the rest is a fantastic vehicle, but one of the issues I've found is that it's actually burning an excessive amount of oil. Like, I mean a lot of oil, and this is probably due to a number of factors. It's probably due to the fact that the actual rings are slightly worn, or it's due to valve guide seals actually in the head. So since we're actually going to be heading out on the Connie Sue and going to a very remote part of the world, I've decided that I'm actually going to rebuild an entire motor. And I wanted to do this myself. So when I say I mean actually we. I'm going to take this motor hopefully to Galloway Engines, and I've been recommended to go to this place by the team and the followers and the people who help to run West Oz. Now West Oz Series, it's called West Oz Series, is a fantastic Facebook group, and it's dedicated to series Land Rovers in Western Australia. And I'll put a web link in the content section down below. So if you are in Western Australia and you do have a series Land Rover and you've got some questions, that's the group to join. Now the interesting thing about this motor is the actual cylinder head was actually offered, and it's I don't know how long it's been sitting in the actual car like that, but it's obviously been sitting in there for quite some time. Because when I pulled it out, and I'll put some footage in here and you'll actually be able to see the condition of it, it was actually pretty poor. It was covered in just dust and muck and all the rest, and I thought that the engine was seized. I was really surprised when I actually pulled it out and put it in the back of the number 5 trailer that there was oil coming out of it because it fell over on its side. When I knew oil was coming out of it, I knew one thing and one thing alone. I knew that the internals down towards the crankshaft would probably be okay. So to get the engine actually turning over again, what I actually did was, it was cylinder 1 and cylinder 4 were actually halfway through their stroke, so they weren't actually sitting flush as you see here. So what I did is I filled them up. Oh sorry, first what I did is I cleaned the motor, and I used an engine cleaning kit on my air compressor and used a lot, and I mean a lot, of degreaser to get all the muck off. And there's still a little bit of muck on it at the moment. But after I did that, what I did is I made sure that, particularly in the cylinders, that I got any water or any abrasive material out of it. And then what I did is I actually put diesel in the actual bore of the cylinders, and I left it here for probably about 2 days. I came back every day, had a bit of a look, and in cylinder 1 the diesel had all gone. Where had it gone? Well, it had actually seeped through the actual rings and down through the piston into the crankcase. Because diesel, as you know, is a very, very, very thin oil, and it's perfect for this kind of stuff. Cylinder 4, it had only gone sort of halfway down the cylinder, because I filled them pretty much up flush. So I knew it was kind of getting through that, but cylinder 4 would be the problem. So what I did is I actually got a pair of Stilsons here, and I very carefully, I didn't heave on it, just very, very carefully put it on the crankshaft. And by putting it on the crankshaft, I could therefore do, oh, I'll just get it to work, get it to do this. So it would actually turn over. Now once I actually got these 2 pistons to go down to the bottom of their stroke, around the top there was obviously a little bit of surface rust. So what I did is I got in there with a bit of very fine wet and dry, or emery cloth, and I wet it, because there's no point just using emery cloth or wet and dry on its own. You've got to wet it, because otherwise it clogs up and you don't get as much out of it, you don't get as much bang for your buck. And so I went round the area that had a bit of surface rust, and I just kept going round, going round, going round. And then I wiped it off using degreaser, and then I got a wire brush on my cordless drill and just went around and just cleaned it up. And then very, very patiently what I did is I put a light bit of engine oil around the perimeter of the piston, and then I would just get it to go down to the bottom of its stroke and very slowly push it up. When it got up to the top here, you'd see all the rust filings on top, and I just wiped that off. I kept doing that until it was completely clean. And now it turns over an absolute breeze. So I'm pretty happy with it. Now one of the things you can do if you've got a motor, no matter what it is, and you want to see how worn it actually is, put your finger inside the bore, and if there's a big ridge line at the top, then you know its days are probably numbered. But the funny thing is with this, when I do that, it's got the ever so slightly tiny little lip, nothing at all. And it looks like that these are oversized pistons. So I would say that this block has been rebuilt at some stage. Interesting. Either way, what I'm going to do is send it off to Galloway Engines, and I'm going to get them to do the work because I just don't have time myself, sadly. Full-time job and all. But this is going to be what I call a 2.25 litre or 2.25 litre S sports model. I'm going to fit it with a 2.5 litre or a camshaft out of a later Series 3 that was used in a 200 TDI. So this will give it a little bit more get up and go. I'm going to get the heads ported, and I'm also going to get the cylinder head, the gas flow and inflow changed a little bit too to give it a bit more pickup. The reason why I want to do that is particularly with an overdrive, it does help to have a little bit more punch, I tend to find. So that's the idea with this project here. So hopefully I'll take this down towards the end of the week and drop it off, and hopefully maybe in a month's time we'll have it back and we'll have it ready to go in the Series 3. So wait and see. But either way, exciting times. I don't want to wake up the next door neighbours, but this is the new Land Rover in the fleet here. It's a 1984 Land Rover Series 3, so it is a Series Land Rover. We've kept it in keeping with our values and ideologies here at Seriously Series. And so it's a 109-inch station wagon, and it's a very rare vehicle indeed. There wasn't a lot of these, particularly being 1984. They finished these in 1985. But the reason why it's so rare is I'm going to show you in a moment. I'll just pop the bonnet and we'll have a look. Let's get in there. Okay, so a little bit of jerky camera work there, but this is the real pistons, resistance with this vehicle. This is a Isuzu 3.9 litre not TD, it's 4BD1. So these were first introduced in the Land Rover Series 3 Stage 1. And I think you can see here, I'll try and zoom you in, but you can see that it's actually, it should get you in there. You can actually see that it was fitted with a Isuzu motor at the Surrey Hill factory. So that means that it's completely 100% genuine, not an aftermarket job at all. Those of you who don't know, these are fitted also with the LT95 gearbox. Obviously a few alterations from previous owners, which I'll have to change, along with the cigarette lighter. And obviously someone's decided to put an instrument panel in, which I'll be getting rid of and putting proper Smith gauges in. It's got the typical Land Rover problem of the cracks in the dash. If you look up at the roof, it's a tropical roof, so they're the vents. So you just pull these levers down and then the vents open up and nice, reasonably cool air comes into the cab. Obviously Series 2 here, Series 2 here, and that's the back. So one of the reasons for actually buying the Stage 1 was that for the future here at Seriously Series it will probably be a bit more practical. I still regard the short wheelbase, or the 80, the 86, the 88 inch and the 90 as being the true Land Rovers out there. Because that's where it all started. It started with the 80 inch, and that was based on the same wheelbase as the Willys Jeep, or the Willis Jeep, or whatever you want to call it. But just having that ability to carry a larger payload is actually really, really handy. And one of the things I looked at too was obviously the Stage 1. I didn't want to go for the V8. It's not that I have anything against the V8, but they are a fantastic engine, but they are slightly heavy on fuel. And the 4BD1, I've just been so impressed with it in the Parenti. It is a really, really awesome motor, and it just suits the vehicle right down to the Whitworth bolts and all the rest, or the Whitworth threads. So it is a fantastic compromise. It is a Series Land Rover 2, as I said. It fits with what we do here at Seriously Series, and in my mind I think it's probably one of the most rugged and simple to maintain Land Rovers out there, because you've got leaf springs all round. I know a lot of people don't like leaf springs, and they aren't as good as coils, I'll admit that, but if you maintain them and you do right by them, they can actually work very, very effectively. And particularly with the Land Rovers, they got it right. With other vehicles, they tended to go for not as many leaves, and they made them a lot thicker, and therefore this caused them not to have the ability to flex with as greater ease. So therefore it gave you a really bad ride. But the Series 2, the ride's really good in that. The Series 3, it's pretty good in that. And I would imagine if I do everything that I've done to the other vehicles, we should get a pretty good ride out of the Stage 1. The other thing is that the Stage 1 was really, it was a stopgap between the Series Land Rover and the County, or the 110. But I guess it's a classic Land Rover that you could call it a classic Land Rover now, but it's one that's certainly overlooked by many. But I think as a daily driver, and I have had people ask me in the past, I want to use a Series Land Rover as a daily driver or commuter. I've sort of said, well, if you want to do that, you can do it. It's all possible, but you need to keep in mind that probably in modern day traffic and all the rest, you either drive to the specs of the Land Rover, or if you want to drive it like a modern day vehicle, then you need to change a few things. And personally, I think if you start changing things, you change the character of the car, and you end up waking up in the morning and realising I should have bought a Defender 90. It's that simple, Keep them as they are. That's my view. And make do with what you've got, to a point, obviously, because I've just talked about putting a slightly more aggressive camshaft in a 2.25 litre petrol. But anyway, that's pretty much where we're at the moment. There's going to be other stuff obviously cropping up along the way. I am hoping to put a new clutch in the Parenti and obviously get the 24-volt system going. I won't do that myself. I'll be calling upon the experts at Goldfields Off-Road to do that, because it's not my area of expertise, and I'm more than happy to admit that, because you can't know it all. And if you meet someone who thinks they know it all, yeah, I'd question that. But anyway, that's just my opinion. Anyway, look, I hope you've enjoyed this video and a little bit of behind the scenes as to what goes on here at Seriously Series. It's a lot more than just getting in a car, chucking it into top gear and just putting your foot flat to the floor. What we're doing here is we're keeping these vehicles alive, and we're going to some of the most remote and, I would like to say, exotic places in Australia. And it just goes to show it doesn't matter what vehicle you have, if you maintain it, if you take an interest in actually maintaining your vehicle, you can keep it going for a much, much longer period of time. Anyway, once again, thanks for watching. If you want to support the generation of content here at Seriously Series, you know what to do. Click on the Patreon icon at the top right hand corner of your screen, and if that isn't your cup of tea, that's fine. Visit our website at seriouslyseries.com.au and you can click on the donate button and that will take you straight to our PayPal account. If you're new to the channel and you're still trying to figure out who we are and what we do and all the rest, well, click on that subscribe button down below, click on the notification button too. That way you won't miss out on one single video. Anyway, thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you in our next video.